hit the record button, so you'll get a copy of the report. So again, welcome to first class of our Schools of Karma and Spiritual Astrology class. This first section I'm going to try to get through quickly. Is this kind of introductory material, what we're going to do. It's the type of thing that you have to do on the first day of a class. And then we have a lot of material to cover. I always prepare too much, and that's always kind of the problem. One of the things that I have, I was trying to turn off Facebook because all the text kind of pop up on the screen, so please pardon them if they do. I don't really know what. I couldn't quite turn off Facebook. I was afraid I was going to turn off the web. So you can, questions at the moment are going to best come through chat. I will kind of unmute you at some point. I think you're all muted at the moment. I'm going to unmute you now if you want to say hello. I'm going to show your pictures if you want to introduce yourself real quickly too. So we're going to start by traditional, Ganesh obviously is the god of astrology, the funny man with the elephant head, and we all love him. So I'm going to start by doing some chanting. Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganapataye Namaha, Om Ganapataye Namaha, Om Ganapataye Namaha. Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvinavatittamastu, Mahavidvishai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Just real quickly, I did bring in some photos of you. This took me to the last minute, and I hope you don't mind if I borrow a photo from Facebook. If you want to send me another photo, that's fine. Carol Taggi just signed up from Colorado Springs. I don't know if she's with us today, but this is a lovely picture I found of her on the web. She's from Colorado. If you're there, Carol, you want to say hello, you can say hello. Dorinka is coming to us from Sydney, Australia. A lovely picture of Dorinka. She's a wonderful Vedic astrologer. There's a lady who's not online with us, Elizabeth Kamek. She lives in Malaysia, which I think it's 4 o'clock in the morning there, so it's just a little bit difficult to get her into the class live, but she's going to take it on Facebook over the tapes. Christina Sai lives in the Philippines. That's a picture of her with her husband. She took some of my financial astrology classes, and I think Philippines is also another one of those crazy time zones where it's like 3 o'clock in the morning there. So I've always had trouble fitting her into live classes unless I do them at like 9 a.m. in the morning. And then Partho Nath is from California. I believe it's San Jose. It doesn't matter. Someplace in the Bay. He's a good friend of mine, and he's here with us live today. And Sonaral, you're with us today. Where do you live currently? I think I have you all unmuted. You live in Mumbai. Okay, so you're joining us from Mumbai. Okay, that's great. Okay. So that's really great to have somebody from Mumbai here kind of at 1:30 in the morning joining us to study astrology with us, so that's really wonderful. And then Varsha is from South Africa. She's a student of Camilla Sutton's that I've gotten to know, and it's 10 o'clock p.m. in South Africa, so she told me that she was going to watch the tapes. And there's another lady didn't have a picture of. Catherine's from Alberta. She just signed up this morning, Catherine. So if you want to send me a picture, I'll be happy to include you in our class photo album. Does anybody want to say anything? I thought the mic's unmuted. If you want to say anything real quickly, it just took me about 45 minutes to get your pictures up, and so I just the last minute thing. But I was just happy. I thought it was a nice way to create kind of a group. I don't do Zoom where you kind of can see everybody at the same time. So this is like the best thing we could do. Okay, and I've got one person who's just here as caller number 1. I don't know who that is.
Hi, Barry. This is Wayne. I just logged in. I'm having some problems with
Okay. Oh, Wayne's
stuff.
here too. I didn't get your picture up. Okay. Glad to hear, Wayne. So you under caller number 1? Okay, great. Okay, great. So, good. Okay. So I'm going to mute you all. I'm going to try to, what I'm going to, here's our class. So, in terms of the format, we're going to, today I'm going to do a little bit more lectures because I just have a lot of material to get through, but I will allow questions, and when I need to take a break, I'll turn the mics on and you can ask questions when I'm done of this section. If you have an urgent question, I find that it kind of interrupts the flow a little bit, so we're going to write it down and we have a pause. Bring it up again, but if it's like super urgent because I've missed something or this, do type it in on chat. I will also have a page on Facebook that we'll need to add you to, Classes by Barry Rosen, and you can kind of bring up questions there, and we can converse with the class during the week. I believe I called it Classes by Barry Rosen, but I'll have to kind of double check. And I suggested that, in my emails to you, if you review the homework tapes and the study guides beforehand, it gives you some exposure to the material so it's not brand new, and I think that's a good way to bring in the class. Quick class schedule. We will meet every week. I have 1 week off to visit my dad on June the 25th, so the class will go through July 2nd. So the class purpose, my philosophy in Jyotish, a lot of this class is not about prediction. It's about psychology and spirituality. And my whole sense about Vedic astrology is that if we understand the influences that are affecting us, and we understand the hidden influences that are affecting us, then we get to know ourselves better and we can make changes and they don't impact us. A lot of the astrology kind of affects our emotions and our psychology. And so when we're aware of it, we can kind of like say, oh, that's Saturn causing that pattern, and we won't beat ourselves up. So if you've read my articles, I always talk about that. I think that's the real value, the spiritual value of astrology, is that it removes the blemish of our thoughts and our psychology, and they kind of make us wrong. We get Mercury is acting really weird, and we start beating ourselves up for forgetting things, but it's just Mercury, afflicted by Saturn or something like that. So the other thing, what happens is that by focusing on the planets, you develop Jyotir Vid, which means you feel them on a daily basis, and then they start talking to you, and then that's really how you learn astrology, is that you observe yourself, you observe what's going on, and the planets start talking to you, and then the insights come when you're doing readings or for yourself. Jyotish is encyclopedic. I mean, I just read a beautiful quote by Camilla Sutton today, that she's been doing Jyotish. Jyotish is a process of being a lifelong student. I've been involved in it since 1986. And I'm still studying and I'm still learning new things, and that's the wonderful thing about it. The ocean of Vedic knowledge is kind of unbounded. And one of the things I just suggest to you is, develop a good reference library, because you can't remember everything. It's like reading strands of GNA. So I don't know everything. If you have a question I don't know, I will find the answer, but it's possible that there's so many encyclopedic things in Jyotish that you can't possibly know it all, but that's the wonder of it. You can always keep growing in it. I think the core level energy, behind astrology sometimes is, why am I here? Why am I suffering? How can I change my life to move beyond my patterns? So, know thyself. It's kind of the whole Platonic self-inquiry, and it's not only small self, it's big self. Because it's like when you pull away the Maya and the strands of thoughts and emotions that we think who we are, and we see that we're just this divine being underneath, That's really the purpose of Jyotish, is to bring enlightenment. So that's the highest purpose of this class also. So, we want to understand the puppet strings that pull our psychology so we can recognize and transcend them. Again, we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, we want to move beyond that. And knowing the astrology helps us see what the influences are so we don't buy into them and get gripped by them. That's the real value of astrology. I'm not really into past life regressions, but I think it's important to understand the past life influences in our chart so that we can get beyond them, and so that we don't repeat the same patterns. I mean, karma, the astrology of karma is really understanding what karma and lessons have we brought in from the past that we're repeating in our life that aren't useful anymore, and can we change them and recognize them and move beyond them. And that's a big focus of this class. For those of you who read my writings, I love the movie Groundhog Day. If you haven't seen it recently, I would rent it and replay it. Bill Murray, 1993. It's about a man who wakes up, who can't get out of this nightmare. He keeps waking up and reliving the same day, making the same mistakes until he, becomes a better person. And I think it's an incredible metaphor of, multiple lives, and, we learn the same patterns. So if you haven't seen that movie recently, watch it again. It's kind of a core movie for our class, learning to understand our patterns so that we can recognize and move beyond them. Ultimately with all this material, we have to kind of, like Bill Murray, we have to kind of practice charity, kindness, and creating good karma in the present so that we don't have to come back and relive the same ugly patterns that we're living again. And that means we have to have awareness of them and understanding of them, and that's certainly one of our goals in the chart. Today I'm not going to bring in all your charts, but I will try to bring in your charts every week to kind of illustrate our principles. I really didn't have time to organize them as well as I wanted to. If I can get to some of them that I have, I will. But hopefully you will do your own work on your own charts from the knowledge that we give you. So we want to understand our weaknesses so we can do a better job. So the first three classes are actually, I'm calling them kind of going deeper into signs and planets and houses. And we all kind of have a basic knowledge of astrology, but I just spent about 15 hours kind of putting together this class because I wanted to come up with something new and deeper that you don't know, and because I think that's ultimately where we have to go to kind of understand our patterns and to go deeper into our client's chart. So we've got 3 lessons, and then we're going to look at the more karmic houses 3, 6, 8, and 12 for a couple weeks. One of my favorite lessons is looking at multiple levels of existence. I think I've shared this with you about how Jyotish is kind of multi-symbolic. So if you have a problem with your car, you have a problem with your heart, and a problem with your mom, because they're all 4th house, and you can see what the problem is if Mars is there or Mercury is there. So I'm going to kind of teach you how to look at multiple levels because it kind of really opens up charts quite a bit. It's very good for Ayurvedic astrology. And I recently had a friend who has breast cancer, and the breasts are connected to nurturing, and cancer is holding on to resentment. It's connected to Saturn and Rahu, and kind of holding on to the past, and she's not nurturing herself, so her breasts are kind of emoting to kind of let her know that she has to take better care of herself. So that's the type of thing that one needs to kind of look at. I added a new lesson, which is looking at really kind of difficult karma. It's lesson 8 now. And so that's looking at some of the kind of the more difficult karmic patterns that come up in difficult things. I'm also kind of interested in kind of looking at karmic manifestations in life from past lives a little bit. And more that comes through more in look at Saturn influences. And then I have this kind of interesting lesson on Varga, which some of you may know, which is about these hidden psychological issues that are very hidden in our life. And we'll actually have a lesson on that. So again, today's lesson particularly is going to be lecture for pauses. I tend to use northern styles. I'm going to charts. I'll try to get. I know a lot of you like southern. I'm going to try to figure out the settings on my program to get that up. If you don't own Sri Jyoti Star and you can fit it into your budget, it's really an incredible program. It does a lot of advanced calculations for things that a lot of the other programs don't do. And yet, if you're in a tight budget, Jagannatha Quora is a free software you can download. It works really well. It does a lot of advanced things that we need. And again, send me your charts if you want me to use them in class. Books, these are, every Jotishi has to have about 150 books in the spot. These are some of my favorites that may be relevant for this class. Bill Levicy's Beneath the Vedic Sky, I think, is one of the best books, on Vedic astrology that's user-friendly. I've talked about it. I just picked up Sanjepi's The Ascendant 180 Planets of the Vedic Astrology. I like his kind of Western analysis of rising signs, and I think it's a useful book to have in your library. Out of print book, Pauline Stone, I'm using The Astrology of Karma. It's kind of a unique approach to a lot of the stuff that we'll be doing. If you're needing information on Western planetary aspects, James Braha, How to Be a Great Astrologer. We'll do a little work with Rahu and Ketu probably next week if we can get to it. And again, all Jyotish is encyclopedic, so you need a reference books for all the combinations. So Camilla Sutton's book is just one of the best. The Lunar Nodes, Crisis and Redemption. Prash Trivedi's book on the lunar nodes is even better, actually, and I should have listed it here. But I've got I like Western astrology, and there's a little bit of a Western astrology orientation in this class because it's more psychological. And Jean Avery's book, Astrology in Your Past Life, is kind of interest for looking at Saturn. Again, you've got the slideshow of this, so hopefully, again, I'm moving quickly because I prepared probably about 3 hours of material, and I'm going to try to get through as much as possible. This is kind of a review. I think I covered this. If you listen to, let me just take a quick pause here. I'm going to unmute you. Or you'd say in chat, how many people had time to listen to my Dasha tape? The reason I wanted you to listen to it is that I had a lot of good basic information on the planets, their good side and their good side and their bad side, And I'm not going to repeat that. So if you haven't gotten to that, definitely. And I'm like all of you. I'm really busy, and so if you don't get to my tapes, I understand, but do go back to them. It's a really great tape. I sent you the slideshow too. If you don't have time to watch a tape, you can flip through the slides and review the good and bad sides of each planet. How many people? I'm just curious. How many people? You can put it in chat. To me personally, how many people had time to listen to that tape? Okay, it's fine if you didn't. We'll just kind of move on. So this is just kind of really basic review material. Every planet has two sides. I mean, Saturn is not all bad, and Jupiter is not all good. I mean, we're not going to learn a lot of the basic principles of Vedic astrology, what's good or bad, but you can review them in Bill Levicy's book. And basically, every planet has a dark and a light side, and from my point of view, you can always find some. You almost never find a perfect planet in anybody's chart. I mean, once in a while you do, but you'll find some affliction there, which means there's still some lessons to be learned about that planet. But so even when planets are really strong, like they're in Kendra houses, or they're exalted, or they're in favorable places. They may be debilitated in the Vamsha chart. They may have an aspect of Saturn on it. So, and that's because I think we come to the world to kind of keep working on our our issues, and so we reincarnate to work on and get the blemishes out. It's called the doshas. Um, Astrology is 1,000 shades of gray, and we don't really get black and whites that often. So even every bad and good astrologers just have to learn to look at all the different colorations to see how gray it is and how black it is and how white it is, and that's kind of one of the keys. And that just takes a lot of time. So don't beat yourself up if you don't know it right away. And if you want some help with that, I have some other video tips I've done in other courses and things like that. We can talk about that. So, you might even, like I just used that example, you might get a planet that's, really pure like Jupiter in the 9th house, which is, really such a great place for it, in the sign of Cancer exalted, but maybe, it's the Scorpio rising, but maybe it's an oscillation nakshatra, so it's blemished by Mercury, and Mercury's in Pisces or something like that. And so, you get, like I said, life is filled with flaws, but that's okay. We don't want to focus on the darkness. And our goal actually as being good Vedic astrologers is that we have to find, if there's a challenge in the chart, if we're doing a client's chart, we have to find a kind way to help them understand the positive side of their lessons. And at the same time, we have to not beat ourselves up with things. I mean, I had a client recently, and she kept beating herself up because she was a Taurus rising and she had Venus conjunct the Sun, which somebody might think is totally combust. But when you looked at it closely, it had a special condition called the name's not coming to me, where Venus is where the Sun is so conjunct Venus, it's called Casime. It actually it infuses the Sun's beautiful energy into that planet, and it makes it a star. So it was actually a positive thing. So I'm mentioning that is that sometimes we get really down on ourselves and say, oh, I've got a debilitated Jupiter, or I've got this and that. And, there's always some positive thing in it somewhere. So, again, astrology is not black and white. It's 1,000 shades of gray. So don't beat yourself up, make yourself wrong about bad placements. They're perfect. Now, this is, I may have to send you a videotape because I don't want to. There's some basic things I've learned from Jaimini astrology that not everybody has studied, and they bring in kind of richer aspects that aren't always taught in strict Jyotish classes. And I'm going to bring some of them up here. And we probably could have a whole lesson on them. Maybe if I have time, I'll make an extra hour tape for you to watch. And I think I covered them in some of my other tapes. But Rahu, these are just little things that people don't always know. Rahu has an aspect on the 12th house. So it has that backwards aspect, and kind of a sneaky aspect, and most people don't know about that. And in fact, I was even thinking, I have Rahu at 8 degrees Sagittarius, my ascendant's at 7 degrees Scorpio, so I have an exact aspect of Rahu within 1 degree on my ascendant, which makes me just kind of radical, innovative. Rahu is gets a lot of bad press. Rahu is really about creativity and innovation. You find it in artists and inventors, and wanting to do things new in a different way, in a radical way, and that's what my classes are about. I don't teach traditional Jyotish. I'm teaching you kind of new ways of looking at things. But Rahu has a 12th house aspect, so you have to remember to look at that. Also, Rahu is the co-ruler of Aquarius along with Saturn, and sometimes it becomes the primary rulers. And so you have to kind of remember that Ketu is the co-ruler of Scorpio, and sometimes it's the primary ruler. I mean, again, after all these years of astrology, a couple of years ago, I learned that on Scorpio rising, Ketu is my primary ruler, and I've got Ketu. Ketu is the ascetic, the meditator. He's into Jyotish. I've got Ketu in the 8th with a stationary Jupiter. I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, I've got Mars, the other co-ruler in Aries, and you can see some of that, but you sometimes have to realize that Ketu can be the main ruler of Scorpio, and Rahu can be the co-ruler of Aquarius. and that can um, um, change your interpretation of that house dramatically. So it's something you need to learn, and there's I could send you a sheet on the rules on that. Uranus is obviously connected to Aquarius. It's a higher octave of Mercury. I do use the outer planets. I think they're very important. We'll have a lesson on the outer planets in lesson 3. You can't ignore them. They're very important for a lot of things. Pluto is connected to Scorpio, and it's a higher octave of Mars, and Neptune's connected to Pisces. It's a higher octave of Venus. And traditional Vedic astrologers might not teach that, but it's very important. We need to talk. I have a couple of lessons on planetary aspects, exalted and debilitated planets. I'll bring some of that in today. We're going to have to, again, I may have to give you access to those videotapes to go deeper into it. We're going to have a review later today about an important point from Dramini astrology, which is called Marna Karakasthana. Most of you know Digbala, that's where a planet has status. So Jupiter and Mercury have status in the first house, Sun and Mars have status in the 10th house, Saturn has status in the 7th house, and Mercury and Venus have status in the 4th house. That's places they like to be, and we'll explain why that is. And then there's actually a worse place for planets also. So Sun has status in the 10th house, but it hates being in the 12th house. So we'll go over that. I think it's a really important point to understand. It's not taught very much. Okay, so that was my whirlwind tour here. I don't want to go too much. One of the things that I'm not doing in this class, which I've done in my last 2 classes, is talking a lot about nakshatras. I love nakshatras. I think they reveal a lot of hidden information. I just had to kind of not do everything in this class. So I may do a whole class on nakshatras sometime. But I think nakshatras help reveal kind of a microscopic quality of the planets, because there's 4 sections to each nakshatra, and those are connected to different aspects of our life. So I'm not going to bring that in now because I don't want to overwhelm you with too many details. I've done that already. So I'm going to take some quick questions. I was just trying to get through. I wanted to do this in a half hour. It's a half hour. Let me take some questions. I can't go really fast. So the good part of it is I have written slides for you to review, and you can review the videotapes. The bad part of it is I go really fast, and because there's there's a lot of material to cover, and I could do 12 weeks of 1.5-hour classes, but I always assume people don't want to spend 12 weeks in a class, so I went down to 8 weeks of 2-hour classes, and then there's a lot to cover. So this was just kind of our quick overview. We're going to go into new material now. This is my quick overview of what we're going to do, in the next 8 weeks. And do you have any questions about anything that I've said, about anything of logistics of the course, anything at all? Your mics are unmuted.
Well, Barry, I missed the first 5 minutes. I didn't want to see if I missed anything particularly important at that point.
No, you didn't. I was kind of introduced. I put up people's pictures. I did some chanting. So you didn't. If you just missed the first 5 minutes, you're fine. So, yeah, MKS. Good question. Means Marna Karakasthana. We're going to talk about it. It means it's the opposite of Digbala. It means when a planet is in a house that it doesn't like. So the Sun doesn't like being in the 12th house. The Sun likes status, it likes to shine in the 10th house. It's in the 12th house, it's hidden from view. Venus, likes to be in the 4th house of home and happiness. When it goes into the 6th house, it gets into kind of a fighting mode. The 6th house is the house of celibacy, and Venus is a planet that likes sensual pleasure. So we'll go over that on one of my slides later. But I'm abbreviating it MKS because it's a big word. I would just say it means a place of weakness by house placement. It's a very important concept that doesn't get taught very much. Okay. Other questions? So just to summarize, a lot of psychology in the class, a lot of deep insights into things that you thought you knew that we're going to kind of, you can tell from my articles that I like to go very deep. I'm Scorpio. I get very complex. I get very deep with material. I'm trying to bring out the richness and the depth of this material. So it's not just, oh, that's a good placement and that's a bad placement. One of my goals in this class is to help you translate material more specifically. You know, I could add that to our purpose. You know, I find that a lot of, you know, sometimes I go to if you go to an Indian astrologer and they don't have a lot of verbal command of the language, they'll say, oh, that's good or that's bad. Well, what does that really mean? You know, nothing is kind of black and white like that anyway. It means, like, if Mars is in Taurus, it may mean that you're caught up in the material part of life and you're caught up in sensual pleasures and bodybuilding, but you're ignoring Mars's duty of service and you know, activity and courage because you're caught up in the sensual world. So, you know, the idea is that I'm wanting to help you translate the language of Jyotish, which is very abstract beyond good and bad, into something that's very specific. You know, why is, and that's what we'll do today a little bit, why is the moon debilitated in Scorpio? Well, if you tell somebody they have a debilitated planet, they're going to feel depressed unless you explain what that means, that their emotions get bottled up in Scorpio. Either they're too emotional or they get, you know, they get caught up in a lot of negative thinking in Scorpio in the swamp, and they have to learn how to kind of not be caught up. You know, they have to find a way to move through their emotions. So part of my goal in these first 2 or 3 weeks is to help you kind of translate things into very specific, psychologically based English helpful statements that help translate astrology into something that's useful. So that's part of my goal, and we're going to start doing that right now. If I can find my second slideshow. Okay, so I sent you this about 2 o'clock. I'm sure you probably didn't have too much time to look through it. And so what I want to go to today, what I want to do today is I want to introduce old material, but I want to do it in a deeper way. So I'm going to give you a lot of hidden insights into signs and planets that, you know, most people don't give you. And just there's a couple gems. There's a lot of gems in the section that you can, you know, do a very deep reading for somebody or yourself just by knowing these kind of deep points that aren't usually talked about in Vedic astrology. Okay. So just before I do that, I want to, you know, I talked about, you know, I have this wonderful title, The Schools of Karma, and certainly everything in our astrological chart is karma, so it's really kind of descriptive. The schools of karma is meaning that, like, the school of Saturn is trying to teach us responsibility and hard work, and you know, learning not to get caught up in fear and learning, you know, and things like that. But so when we have planetary afflictions in our chart, it's kind of understanding the past life wrongdoing. So it's thought of by the spiritual masters that karma is unfathomable. But what I can usually see in people's charts is that you can guess that the current afflictions that you're in are a result of past wrongdoing. So, for example, let's say you have Venus conjunct Rahu or Mars. You know, if you have that configuration, if you're a man, chances are you abused a spouse in a past life. Today you have prostate problems or problems with reproduction, or, you know, low semen count or something like that. And if you want to work through that, you've got to either treat your wife better this lifetime, or you know, if you're not married because she's left you and you haven't done a good job, then you have to donate to battered women's shelters or do volunteer work for them and address the wrongdoing. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of getting this awareness that if you have a planetary affliction, it's probably because you messed up last time, and you don't have to beat yourself up about it, but what are you going to do this time to do a better job with it? Are you going to learn how to treat your wife better? Are you going to be kind to her? Are you going to, not be abusive? If she's already left you because, you haven't learned those issues, what are you going to do to be a better person? So I think that's part of my approach. Even though karma is unfathomable, we can see kind of from the afflictions in our chart what we've done wrong in past lives. So, and I think that's kind of part of what we're hoping to accomplish in this class. Now, I ended up, again, I've been working on the slideshow all week, and then I ended up realizing that the latter part of the slideshow should go first, and the earlier part of the slideshow should go second. So we're going to skip ahead to what I'm calling part one. So this is part two, which is the first part of the slideshow, and we're going to skip ahead to part one, and then we'll come back. So here's part one. I don't know what slide it starts with, but it's kind of, in the middle someplace. I want to start with kind of basic material, and these are kind of new dimensions at looking at signs. Now this is a really key point. Most of us get caught up in the idea that let me put on my viewer. Most of us get caught up in the fact that we think we're Scorpio rising or we're Libra rising, and that's just who we are, okay? And we get very attached to, the Western astrologers sometimes do this, my sun's in Aries, I'm an Aries, okay? But, you're all the signs of the zodiac, and you have to not really get attached to just being one sign. In fact, in the material that I'm going to go over with, we've got your rising sign. Okay, yeah, that's the most important thing. Maybe that's 50%. And then there's your moon sign. Now, your moon's in another sign. You can run the chart from your moon sign, and the things that we're going to say about the moon, about that of the signs now, are applicable if you have the moon there. Then your sun sign is the third level, right? Then there's a thing called the Aruda Lagna. That's how, I'll have to teach you that at some point in the class. Aruda Lagna is how other people see us in the world. So, for example, even though I'm Scorpio rising, my Aruda Lagna is Capricorn with Venus in the first house. So people see me as this kind of friendly business person, Venus in the first house, that people are attracted to me because I've got Venus in the first house. And that makes me very successful on a number of levels. And so Capricorn, where my Aruda Lagna is another sign that I have to look at. My moon's in Scorpio, my sun's in Pisces, my rising sign Scorpio. So already there's three signs that are key in my chart. Then we have to look at the rising signs in the Varga charts. The Varga charts are these divisional charts. Most of you know them, the Navamsha chart. There's a chart for career. There's a chart for children. The rising sign in the Varga chart is often very important for telling something about the Varga. And so the rising sign for my business, for my D10 chart, Dashamsha, is Pisces. And so there's another sign that I am, okay? The rising sign for my Navamsha chart, D9, which is my hidden qualities, is Virgo. And I have an awful lot of Virgo in me. And I think they have a lot more Virgo in me than I have Scorpio in me. Because the D9 represents kind of our hidden qualities. And so Virgo is an important thing for me to look at. So you see already, just looking at myself, I've rattled off six signs that I need to look at. When you go through all your charts, you're all the Vargas, okay? So you're all these signs. So all the information that I'm going to be giving you is applicable not just to your rising sign, which may be important, but also to your moon sign, your sun sign, your Aruda Lagna, your rising signs in the Vargas. So you're all of these things. And in fact, you're all the signs. That's so. And some may dominate more. I mean, certainly what you'll find if you look at people's charts, we can do this, if you find that somebody has a pattern, let's say they they have an awful lot of Pisces. Let's say they have 5 planets in Pisces, and their rising sign is Pisces, and their rising Navamsha is Pisces, and their, you know, um, you know, you know, you can focus, you can, obviously focus on Pisces and be very correct. Look at their Varga charts. Maybe you'll find a lot of Virgo. Maybe they have 10 signs that are Virgo rising in their Varga charts. Suddenly there's a lot of Virgo there. So you're looking for patterns in the signs too. So we're all the signs, so don't get caught up in just one of them. So as we go through them, you want to realize that you're all of them. Okay, so I sent you an article and I actually republished it this weekend. It's called about the rise. It's kind of the Achilles heel for signs. Again, let me see how many people have read that. I'm not going to. The nice thing is. So I've unmuted you. I'm just, again, you can let me know in the chat, and nobody else will see it if you just chat to me. I was curious how many people read that article. I don't, the nice thing is when I have a published article, again, you can reread it carefully 2 or 3 times until you get it, and I don't have to spend, a half hour in class going over it. But I will add some new points to it. Good. I'm glad you read the article. Great. If you haven't read it, again, I'm super busy too, and so don't ever feel guilty about not doing your homework. I'm taking an advanced geometry class now, and I missed 4 classes because I was traveling, and stuff happens. So just catch up when you can. So don't ever feel bad if you can't do the. It's better to come to class live than not have read anything than not to come at all. So please come because there's a value in live classes. Well, anyway, in this article, I'll just quickly go through this article. So it turns, and we'll go through it when we go through the various signs. So it turns out 7 of the signs of the zodiac have problems with certain planets, and then 5 of the signs of the zodiac have problems with the elements. So there's 2 parts to the article, and they're very kind of deep insights. A lot of this material came from Sanjay Rath, one of the people I've studied a little bit with, and when you're doing somebody's chart or you're looking at your life, you may not have noticed this problem, but when you go through this, it suddenly kind of jumps out at you. So like Geminis have problems with the planet Venus because Venus owns the 5th and the 12th house. So inevitably, 5th house is romance and children, 12th house is sexual union, and 12th house is also marriage and relationship. People don't understand that about 12th house. It's the house of sacrifice, where we sacrifice to get married, to have children, and sacrifice for our children. And inevitably, many people who are Gemini rising, even though Venus seems like just a great planet for Geminis, it has this hidden problem because it owns the 5th and the 12th house. So Virgo has a problem with Saturn. Virgo's like purity, and Saturn is dirty, okay? So Virgos want perfectionism in everything. And so Virgo, Saturn owns the 5th and the 6th house, okay? The 5th house is romance again, or children, and 6th house is, illness and challenges. So so Virgos tend to be tend to have problems with finding the imperfections in their partner. If they, I have Virgo rising in my Navamsha chart, and I have a lot of Virgo in me in that respect. And I'm like that. If there's a spot on the wall, I won't notice how perfect the wall is. If there's a spot on the painting, I'll immediately look at the spot, and that's that kind of Virgo quality coming out in me, where I'm looking for perfection in everything, and I'm always dissatisfied because I'm always seeing the flaws, and that's the problem with Saturn. And this can arise in any Varga chart. You could have Moon in Virgo, you could have Sun in Virgo, you could have Virgo rising in the Navamsha, you could have Virgo rising in the D10 chart. So look at so whenever you have Virgo problems, you have problems with perfectionism. Libra has problems with the fire element and Mars. So Libras tend to get into fights and relationships or get into abusive relations. If Mars is afflicted in the chart, they can get into a lot of conflicts. Mars likes to fight, right? And Libras often get into trouble with relationships, particularly before the age of 29. And sometimes there's sexual abuse involved or something because Mars can be a little bit forceful. That's a hidden quality of Libra that's a problem. Sagittarius, this is not in my article. Sagittarius has problems with Rahu. It also has problems with Mercury. Mercury is the lord of the seventh, but it also has problems with Rahu. Rahu tends to kind of doubt God. It tends to be, it goes against, Sagittarius is the sign of belief and religion and fanaticism, and Rahu is the radical who's the maverick, who's the outcast, who kind of goes against religion. So Sagittarius, if you get Sagittarius connected to Rahu or Rahu in Sagittarius, they have a particular problem with that. They may have a problem with God itself. So most people think that Rahu is debilitated in Sagittarius. And so Jupiter has to be aspecting Sagittarius to overcome that problem. Otherwise, it can bleed into marriage and professional problems and things like that. Anyway, you can review that article. I'm actually going to rewrite it at some point soon. It got published in Gocharya magazine, and we're going to get it published in a couple other journals. But it's got a lot of deep stuff. Many of you probably look at this, but sometimes we forget that Aries is the natural first house of the zodiac, and Taurus is the natural second house of the zodiac, and Gemini is the natural third house of the zodiac. And so whenever you're looking at any chart, you have to remember that, because sometimes if maybe the second house is fine, and the person's family and money situation may look fine, but Taurus, the second sign of the zodiac, is heavily afflicted, and so it will bring problems, for money and family and speech, because the second house of the zodiac is afflicted. So most of you know to look at this, but most of us forget, because there's so many things to look at in Jyotish. So one of the things that we're going to do in this class is look a lot at these natural significations, because they have a lot of deep symbolism with them. So, for example, Aquarius is connected to Rahu, Saturn, and Uranus. It's not just Saturn. Rahu is the co-owner, often the primary ruler. Rahu governs technology and tends to be radical. Aquarians tend to be Aquarius is the natural 11th house of the zodiac, which is the house of groups. And so people who are Aquarius rising are often, into humanitarian causes and groups, or they're involved in rebellious action because Rahu is the rebel and wants to change society. And Aquarius is just a very kind of radical sign in that way. So when you're looking at somebody's problems with groups, you're not only looking at the 11th house and the 11th house owner, you have to look at Aquarius. So this is kind of a friendly reminder. This is basic Jyotish, but something that gets de-emphasized and forgotten. I'm going to be using these words, many of you know them, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. They're called the three gunas. Sattva is the creative impulse. It's connected with purity, and it's connected with Brahma, with kind of things like Jupiter. It's about creating. It's about manifesting. Rajas is active. It's kind of like, in Ayurveda, Rajas foods are tamasic. You eat a lot of onions and hot foods and chili peppers. You get very kind of active and moving. Rajas is kind of very fiery in that respect. And Thomas sometimes gets a bad name. Thomas, Thomas in Ayurveda is kind of connected to inertia or sloth or something like that, which is true. But in Vedic astrology, Thomas is the better word for Thomas is material, the material world, or inert. It's like the manifestation. So, like Taurus is the most Tamasic rising sign, but that doesn't mean it's a bad rising sign. It just means it's a very earthy, material rising sign. And people with with Taurus in their chart have a very kind of materialistic orientation. Same thing for Capricorn and things like that. But so some of these words are sometimes applied to the signs. The other thing that sometimes many of you know, you have the elements. I'm not going to go through this now because it's too complicated. I don't want to give you too much. You've got the slides on it. So I'm going to go through the following slides now, and there's a key phrase in each slide. And this is very precious knowledge that people won't give you. Whenever you have a particular sign in the chart, you can look at one of these keys and you can use the key to interpret that planet. It's a very powerful knowledge. It's something worth memorizing. I think one of the problems that we have as Vedic astrologers is that there's some point that we have to memorize certain things. I suggested that in my Dasha slideshow that you memorize what planets are friends and enemies for each rising sign, because you just have to know that off the top of your head. You have to know that Jupiter is a functional malefic for Libra and Taurus, and it tends to create false optimism and that kind of thing. So you have to kind of know that material. Again, that's in the slideshow that I gave you. I can't go through it all, but that's really key. The most important thing about this lesson is to memorize these keys. Whenever you hear this particular sign, whether it's in a Varga chart, or the moon's there, or the sun's there, or a planet's there, you need to kind of think of it in a certain way. Okay, so watch for the bold items, and then we'll go through that. So I'm going to go through all the signs. I'm going to give you kind of some key words for them. Again, you've got the slideshow for this. You don't have to take notes. And the reason I gave you the written material is that you want to listen, and you don't want to be caught up in taking notes, because when you take notes, you miss the next sentence. So don't worry about taking notes here. Just you've got the slides. You can study it on your own. So Aries, one of the things I'm starting to kind of do here is use the Sanskrit words also, because sometimes you buy an Indian book and they're using Mesha, and if you don't know Mesha is Aries, then you're stuck. So if you haven't learned the Sanskrit names for the signs, this is your chance to do it in this lesson when you review this lesson. So so that you just memorize Aries, Mesha, Libra, Tula, that kind of thing. I won't use the Sanskrit names, but I think they're important to know. Aries, Aries is, the key areas to remember, the key information to remember about Aries is, the words fighting, action, defending, competing, anger, power, passion, tenacity, sacrificing, obstinacy, selfishness, being not afraid. And those are all the qualities of Mars that come out in Aries. And of course, when at the beginning of the lesson we said, every sign, every planet has a good and a bad sign. If Mars is well placed, then the highest qualities of Aries will come off. If Mars is weak, then the more difficult qualities will come out. So again, this class is not about teaching you too much of that material, but it's about giving you a new vocabulary and a new way of looking at things. Aries, are very creative people. I have Mars in Aries. I have, it's one of my ascendant lords. Creativity is really very important for me, and if I'm, people don't always use the word creativity with Aries, but it's very important. Um, Planets placed in Aries show self-realization and influence on the world. So the key with Aries, whenever you see Aries in any part of the chart, is planets placed here will tend to do their activities and identify with them and may show major activity in life. So if you have Venus in Aries, then your activity may be centered around Venus-related activity, whether that's artistic creation or Venus is actually even a business planet, although people don't always think about it that way. It may be connected to sexual activity or anything. But so whenever you see Aries in any part of any chart, you need to start thinking of the word activity, identifying activity and where there will be action around that planet. The hidden problem with Aries is that they have problems with the water element. So they have problem with emotion and love and food and connecting to the public. These are all things that are, the moon is kind of our connection to the public. Moon is food, moon is emotion. So Aries, the fourth house from Aries is Cancer. And so the hidden problem for Aries is that they can't connect with their emotions very well. So Venus and the Moon, the watery planets, Venus is also a watery planet, become very difficult problems for them. So relationships become a problem for them, especially if Venus is, in the 4th, 8th, or the 12th, unless the Moon and Venus are in the 4th, 8th, and 12th houses and well placed. So the antidote for this water element problem is connecting with Mother Divine. So if you see somebody who has a lot of Aries in their chart, or there's an Aries problem, they may need to go to a Mother Divine temple. Again, that doesn't work in the Western world. They may need to, if they're into Christianity, they may need to worship Mother Mary in a rosary. That would be the same thing. They may need to, work on healing the divine feminine. So Aries have problems with being selfish, reckless, arrogant, leaving tasks undone. So the key word to remember for Aries is activities and identifying with those activities wherever Aries is. Taurus. Taurus is the bull. I always remember that the word stubborn for Taurus, because all my Taurus friends are like incredibly stubborn. They just are really stuck, and that's because Taurus is the earthiest sign in the zodiac. It just has so much earth element. It can't move. It can't flow. It gets really stuck. Taurus is a very material sign, and the sweet thing about Taurus, it's connected to agriculture and milk. It's very pleasure-loving. It's very slow because it's like a bull. It's very slow. It's very it's ruled by Venus, so it likes just deeds, moral merit. It likes it's fragrant and sweet. Some of the things that you don't ever hear about Taurus. Taurus is the male part of Venus. It actually represents male power and male vigor and male sexual power. And so you put Mars in Taurus, like we have it in transit now, and it tends to bring out, this kind of macho energy and sexual conquest energy. We see that in a natal chart that can come out. Food is kind of a Mars. Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac, so it's the sign connected with food, nourishment, family, banking, and money, and those are kind of natural significations that you always have to think about. So one of the secrets about Taurus, if you see Taurus in any part of any of the charts, it's a planet, if planets are placed here, it gives wealth and social success and prosperity. So it's one of the positive signs. Sometimes you look at the Varga charts and um, you see a planet is in Taurus, okay? And, you don't know how to translate that. Maybe it's in the second house in Taurus. So let's say you've got Jupiter in the second house in Taurus in one of the Varga charts, maybe connected to career or to money. So that's a wonderful placement because that's, any planet placed connected to Taurus in a Taurus sign brings social success, wealth, and prosperity. So that's the key that you want to get whenever you see anything in Taurus in any part of the zodiac, in any part of any of the charts, is it's a place that gives wealth, success, and prosperity. It's a benefic. It's a sign connected with the blessings of Lord Shiva. The problem for Taurus is that it has trouble with the fire element. So if you know Tauruses, they're very earthy. They just can't get moving. The key to help Tauruses is they have to do vigorous exercise. They have to kind of do lots of running and lots of aerobic exercise because they're way too earthy, and they need the fire element to get moving and to do anything. They tend to get stuck and slothful and lost in being attached to things, and that heaviness causes depression and melancholy. So they're the ones that really need, whenever you see a Taurus that has an afflicted Venus, you got to get them to the gym, and they won't want to go maybe, but it's the one thing that kind of saves them. They've got to do vigorous, aerobic exercise. I often notice like Tauruses are, like if you put them on a motorcycle, they're just thrilled because there's so much movement and fire and wind going through them. It gets them moving. It's kind of like that. Tauruses have problems with obviously weight gain and diabetes because they have to watch their sweets, especially if Jupiter is afflicting. So Tauruses have a problem with the fire element. Geminis, okay. I have a lot of Gemini in me. I know Gemini. Gemini gets kind of misinterpreted a lot too. The actual Vedic symbol is a man with a club and a woman with a lute. It's not the twins, although you can talk about the twins. But Gemini is often called the androgynous sign. People in this sign tend to be kind of equally male and female. But you can think of Gemini. The man with the club is the warrior. It's like, don't forget the first, as you know, the nakshatras, the first half of Gemini is owned by Mrigashira, which is Mars. So, the first part of Gemini has that warrior quality to it. And then the second half of, you've got Ardra in between, which is problem nakshatra. And the second half of Gemini is owned by Jupiter, which is gentle and learned. And so that's kind of the woman with the lute. And if you know the sign of Purnavasu, it's the mother of the universe. It wants to give and help people. It's a very kind of giving sign. So Geminis have the uncommon power to grasp thoughts or ideas of others and redeliver them. So obviously it's a sign of communication and thought. We all know that. It's an air sign. It has the power to be flexible and to penetrate the field of the intellect. It's filled with mental vigor, intelligence, reason, thoughts, opinions. Again, those are the good qualities of Mercury strong in the chart. When it's weak, it has problems with doubt, uncertainty. It sees the two sides of everything, and it gets kind of wishy-washy. Obviously, it's a planet good at debating and speaking and communicating. It tends to create two of anything. Whenever you see a planet in Gemini, the Karaka, the symbol for that, may end up leading to two. For example, and I saw this many years ago, I had Jupiter in Gemini, and at some point I realized, well, I might have two gurus, okay, and I was with my first guru for about 15 or 20 years, and then I had a second guru that I've been with for about 25 years, but that was kind of pretty clear in my chart, Jupiter in Gemini, the Venus in Gemini person may have two wives, that kind of thing too. So you can always look for twos with Gemini. Geminis are really into privately moving secretly. The big key word for Geminis is that they need to be creative. they're very creative people, and their mind works so quickly. If they get idle, they get stuck. And so you have to always encourage Geminis wherever it occurs in the chart. Again, we're not talking about rising sign. We could be talking about the rising sign in the career chart, and that's Gemini. That means they have to have a creative career, otherwise they feel stuck, and if they get idle. There are conflicting tendencies that Gemini brings up. One of the key words for Gemini is jack of all trades, master of none. Chakrapani told me that in 1985. I didn't know where he came up with it, but it's true. I've got Jupiter there. I kind of know a lot about everything, and maybe and I'm a master of a couple things, but you do tend to get spread thin. Geminis can be emotionally unhappy and feel misunderstood. They're obsessed with looking young. So the key to Gemini is, whenever you see a planet placed in Gemini in any part of the chart, they need to focus their creativity in that area, or they get stuck and become idle. So wherever you see Gemini in any part of the zodiac, if there's whatever planets are there, you have to tell people to focus and be creative. Otherwise, they're going to get stuck and they're going to suffer. Jupiter does well in Gemini, actually, because it's the sign before exaltation in Cancer, and that's a principle. I used to learn this all the time. People don't teach it anymore, but if a planet is one sign before its sign of exaltation, it's kind of a particularly happy place. And if it's one sign before its planet of debilitation, like so Mars in Gemini is not a great place because Mars gets debilitated in Cancer. So Mars is coming up to its debilitation, so that's kind of considered kind of a low place. Geminis have problems with Venus. We talked about that already, so they have problems with romance and children and relationship. And so, getting through the anecdotes through that is something we'll have to learn later in the class. Cancer, Karaka, water sign. I was when I was doing my research, I had this one friend who's Cancer rising, and absolutely every single word that I was coming up with described him. Sarcastic, unpolite, critical, deprecation, mocking and ridiculing, laughing and causing jokes and fun, surpassing, excelling, expanding. These were all, when I think of my good Cancer friend, these are just really key words. And you don't ever think of Cancer as being sarcastic or critical or deprecating, but those are really true qualities. Cancers are actually very emotional, obviously, and they're swayed by the tides. They obviously get very moody. Cancer is connected to Tamaguna, so there's some rigidity in they get stuck with their attitude. The wonderful thing about Cancer is that Cancer, where we see Cancer in the zodiac, whatever planets are placed there, it brings the blessings of Mother Divine, of Gauri, and so it's actually a very kind of benefic thing to have in the chart. Anywhere in the Varga charts, wherever planet, Cancer, anything placed in Cancer, it's the blessings of Mother Divine. So the key here with Cancer, wherever you see Cancer in any part of any chart, is it shows that, who our best friends are going to be, who's going to care for us, who can heal us. So if you get Venus in Cancer in any chart, this is like in the career chart or something like that, it means women are going to be our friends. They're going to take care of us at work. They're going to heal us. So wherever you have anything with Cancer, the way to translate it is it's a place of care, of nurturing, where someone's going to heal us and be our best friend. Good way to translate Cancer anytime you see it in the zodiac. The problem with Cancer is it has trouble with the earth element. So it has trouble holding on to money in the material world. Cancer is one of the Brahmin signs, and so it tends to be kind of, my friend who I'm thinking of, he's a teacher. He was a school teacher. He had to be a Brahmin, and, he died, miserably. He didn't die, but he suffered financially because he was working in the material, they don't pay teachers, as you know. But he eventually had to get practical. But cancers have to really learn about the material world and holding out of money. If you do a cancer rising chart, one of the best advice you can give them is, study classes on money. Take, Susie Orman classes. Read books on how to save money, how to handle money. They just don't have any sense how to deal with money. Again, some of the things I'm saying about all these signs, are they're general things. They're also kind of hidden deep things, and they're not true of everybody. I mean, if there are a dozen other things that are good for money in a Cancer rising chart, you don't have. But some of the things I'm saying are just very true for just about every chart. So I'm trying to give you deep, true things, but there will be exceptions. Leo, Simha, the lion, fire sign, of course, Rajaguna. Very, very active, expressive, forceful, dominating spirit, like to rule over others, proud, arrogant, boastful, furious, defiant, confident, high opinions of themselves. They want to be number one. They also can be cruel when Leo's afflicted, but our new president of the United States is a Leo rising, and a lot of these qualities kind of jump out at arrogant, boastful, high opinion of oneself, wanting to conquer, and that's when Sun's in Taurus in this chart. It's not really a great place for it to be. One of the things we don't know about Leos is they're very philosophical. They love philosophy. Leos get the blessing of the Divine Father, or Shiva, and so Shiva is connected to the sun. It's always a good anecdote for people who have problems with Leo. Leos don't like to be vegetarians, and you'll find that they're fond of meat, of course, and that makes sense. So the key about Leo, whenever you see something in Leo in the D1 or the D9 or any of the Varga charts, it shows what we naturally learn, read, or what we are superior in. So if you see Leo in the career chart, let's say you see Jupiter in Leo, at work, it means they're going to be a good teacher in the workplace. They're going to be, they're going to have an educator role in the workplace, and they're going to excel at teaching others and mentoring others and that kind of thing. So Leo is where we are superior when we see it in a chart. Leos have problems with the water element and emotion. So it's the 12th house, the moon, and I've got some information in my article about how to deal with that, but they just they have trouble with the water element, so you've got to kind of that really help them with that. Virgo, my favorite sign. Actually, I like Virgo. Virgo's a lot. I have so much Virgo in my life. Many Virgo people in my life. Virgo, Kanya is the Sanskrit name. It's ruled by Mercury. The guna is sattvic, so it's a pure good sign. The symbol, of course, lady holding a lamp on a boat and holding corn in her hands. It's actually the symbol is very important. Virgo is a very earthy sign. As you know, it's connected to trade and commerce. It also makes people good architects and craftsmen. That's connected to the Nakshatra Chicha. Architects come out of Virgo, the latter part of Virgo. Virgos are young, bright, youthful, merry, chaste, obedient, into service, modest, kind, graceful. Service is always the key word for Virgos, right? They're into amusement. That's Hasta, the constellation of Hasta, which is in Virgo, is likes playing games. So that's the mercurial part of Virgo. They like games. They like to have fun, and that's also an important thing to kind of recommend to people who need to bring out more Virgo. Virgos like discipline, order, and rules, and a little bit like Capricorns in that respect. So wherever you have Virgo in any chart in the zodiac, it shows you where you need to be pure or better or to improve. Again, 6th house is an Upachaya house, which means it's connected to improving one's life, right? So working hard and improving one's life. And so wherever you see Virgo in any parts of any of the charts, it usually means that you can tell the person they need to improve in that area. I have like Mars and Virgo in my Navamsha chart, which should mean that maybe I'm not as much of a warrior and a competitor as I need to be, and that was actually true when I was growing up. I really was not very good at baseball, and it was a really kind of problem for me. And so I needed to, if you see, wherever you see Virgo in a chart, whatever planet is connected to Virgo in a chart, it means the person has to work hard in a sixth house manner to improve their life. And that means they have to work at it, And it may not be easy, but they have to work at it. And Saturn is happy in Virgo because it's one sign before Libra. Sun is not as happy here. It's one sign before debilitation in Libra. And we said the problem with Virgo is the perfectionism. It's the curse of the spot. It doesn't like the dirt of Saturn, and it just wants everything to be perfect, and it just can't deal with perfect mates and things like that. I'm going to take a breath of fresh air here. I'm going to unmute you. So do you have any questions on anything I said? And some of the things I'm saying are general that and some of the things you probably haven't thought about. And my purpose is to kind of try to bring out a new vocabulary for talking about the signs. And again, I think the thing to remember is these keys. Wherever you see the key, whenever you have a planet connected to that sign, then you have to remember the key, and that gives you a lot of deep information about the chart.
I would say, I guess I get confused sometimes because I'm so used to like being a Virgo and like Western, and then like in Eastern, or not Eastern, but in Vedic, I'm another sign. So it keeps mixing up in my mind with people sometimes as you're talking.
Right. So that's kind of basic. I mean, the tropical zodiac has its place, but what happens is if you look in the sky now, the sun goes into Aries on the 13th of April. I mean, that's just an astronomical fact. It doesn't go into Aries on March 31st, which is what the Western astrologers would have. So at a scientific level, it's just not accurate. And that's because of the precession of the equinox. But my whole point in teaching you about the signs is I'm not just teaching you about your sun sign or your rising sign or your moon sign. I'm talking about anytime you have anything in any of these signs, okay? You have to start using the language of these signs to translate what's in there. That's my point. Okay, good question. Anything else? I have another question here. Sonara, you have really good questions. You have really good questions. The first two I'm going to pass. Boudica, we're going to have a whole lesson on it, so we'll get a lot of information on that later in the class. Boudica is basically kind of a hidden shadowy psychological quality by rising sign. So if you're a dual sign, the 7th house is Boudica. So if you're Sagittarius rising, then Gemini is a Boudica planet, you have problems with relationship. If you're Scorpio rising, you have problems. Your Boudica planet is the 9th house moon, and you have problems with mother and guru and 9th house managed. But we'll have a whole lesson on that. Yeah, I'm just kind of going by what the Vedic texts say. Aries is Thomas because it's a malefic. But you're right. You would think it would be more Rajasic because it's very active, and that's a really good point. One of my source books just talks about it in that way, and it may be there's a lot of conflicting thoughts in Vedic astrology about certain things. I'm going to look in 2 or 3 other books and see if, um, logically it makes sense that Aries is Thomas, is Rajas, and Taurus is Thomas, and I think that's a good point. So let me double check some of my sources on that's very, very good question. Okay, I'm going to continue so we can get through these, and I still have a whole part 2 to get to, which we're probably not going to get to. Okay, Libra, which is Tula, that's an easy one to remember if you want to know the Sanskrit. I don't know, Tula is also considered Tamasic. Tamasic in this word just means material, It just means it has a material orientation. I don't think it means it's lazy or anything. It's just material. I mean, my wife is Libra rising, and she only thinks about buying things, and that's her nature, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's that's what Thomas means. It means kind of the material. For a lot, the nice thing about Libra, it gets the blessings of Lakshmi for prosperity, and it can end wars. It's the planet that brings peace to the planet. It makes people good diplomats. You often see like Condoleezza Rice, I believe, is either she's Libra rising or she has a lot of planets in Libra, and it just gives her it gave her a lot of diplomatic abilities as a rising sign. The thing that people always think about, the Westerners will say, oh, the scales, that's about balance. Well, the scales actually are the scales of the merchant. So most people don't know that the Libra scales, which is the symbol, are the scales of the merchant. That's when you used to go to the ancient times. You used to put your gold on a scale, and they would give you so many pounds of carrots. But still, Libras often do become lawyers because they get very connected to proof and demonstration and trial and ordeal. So there is that stereotype of Libra is very true. They often become judges. The key with Libra is if you have Libra in the chart, you have to let go of conflict and fighting. Again, we said Mars is the problem planet for Libra. Libras want to fight, and that causes their doom in a relationship. So wherever you see Libra in the chart, it means that they have to let go of conflict, whatever planet is connected to Libra in that chart, if they want to grow in prosperity, if they desire distribution of resources. So Libra can be very successful at business, and they're obviously very good artists, and painters, and they're very lustful. Those are things you all know. What people often forget is they make really great businessmen, and they're very good at being buyers in business and running stores and shops and things like that. But the key with Libra is that wherever you see Libra in the chart, you've got to help them to stay away from conflict, because Mars is the Achilles heel for Libra. Okay. Scorpio, my favorite. I'm Scorpio rising. Scorpio is the mystical sign of transformation. It's also connected with Pluto in Western astrology, and with Ketu, which wants to leave the material world and gain moksha. So Scorpio is actually one of the most spiritual of the water signs, even more so than Pisces. And it craves moksha more than any other sign, and so it tends to kind of sometimes get involved in letting go of the material in order to kind of leave the world, especially if Ketu is the dominant person in the chart. Scorpios are very complex. They have extreme likes and dislikes. They're very impulsive. that means, and they act very quickly, and they don't often think about what they're doing. And so you always have to tell Scorpios to slow down, not to act rashly, think things through, because when they act impulsively, they get into trouble. Scorpio is one of the more difficult signs of the zodiac. Wherever you see Scorpio in a chart, it tends to have a lot of past life karma and suffering. And so wherever you see it in the Varga charts, in the sign, wherever Scorpio is connected to, that the planets connected to Scorpio will have the most past life karma and create the most suffering. Sometimes an extreme level, Ketu always wants to give up the material world, and so that leads to poverty. Scorpios have a lot of problems with addiction, and because they kind of drown in their emotions if they don't express them. And it's a very kind of tumultuous sign. The key to Scorpios is that you have to get them into spirituality. For those of you who do a lot of real world astrology, and you're doing charts of people who are just normal people and not spiritual aspirants, you find that Scorpios are just really extremely troubled and very complex lives, and, deep levels of suffering, and they get involved in drugs and alcohol and sexual addictions and things like that. And the key to helping Scorpios is to get them onto spiritual energy and to get them into meditation and yoga and spiritual knowledge, because that brings up the Ketu aspect of Scorpio, and that takes them out of that swamp. Scorpio is kind of a swamp. It's this watery swamp of poison. And to get out of there, they have to find spirituality. I was very lucky. I'm Scorpio rising, and I started meditating when I was about 17, and I got onto a spiritual life. If I hadn't, I could see, from my teenage years, that I could be a mess. But I was just very lucky to get involved in spirituality on a very young level. So that's really the key for Scorpios. Scorpios have a problem with the space element, Akasha. And I know this for a fact. Scorpios are the most psychic, and they make good astrologers because, they're very intuitive. Ketu is the most intuitive planet. It's the Akashic planet. It kind of can it's just totally psychic. And it's a problem because sometimes you can't get in your body. So the key for Scorpios is they have to get grounded. They need to do a lot of physical exercise. I was recommended, and very rightly so, to do weight training. Jupiter, Scorpio is connected to the disease of lightness. You just get too spacey, and you need heaviness. You need Jupiter, like lifting weights, being in your body to kind of combat that spaciness. Jupiter is the antidote for Scorpios. That means they need a guru. They need to be grounded. Jupiter likes community, right? They need to be part of community. I mean, the things that keep me sane and that are so important in my life as a Scorpio is I've moved to places that have community. And if I don't have community in my life, I get really isolated. I get into my stuff, and my stuff turns, and it's a mess. If I can be with people and have community, if I have the blessings of a guru, then that's an antidote for the problems of Scorpio. So very mystic sign, very, very powerful. Scorpio is the most Brahmin of the Brahmin signs. The Brahmin signs being Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. And Scorpio makes the best teachers, spiritual teachers, and the priests. It creates very deep people, but they're also deep because they've suffered so much. Sagittarius, fire sign, Sattvic. It's a Sattvic fire sign, which is nice to have. The symbol of Sagittarius, Sagittarius is the one military sign. It's the human head and the horse holding the bow and arrow. So it likes to go to war. And, the U.S., which is a Sagittarius rising, has been at war, 240 of its 250 years. It's nature. It has to be at war when it's kind of dark. So military people often have a lot of Sagittarius in them, which is not something you would think about. The fire signs are, Aries and Sagittarius in particular, and Leo, very connected to the Kshatriya, to the warrior, to the military, and to weapons and armament and artillery. And in a sense, Sagittarius Sagittarians become the military advisors often because they're the teachers, right? They teach at the military schools. Keywords for Sagittarius: merit, energetic, swift, spirited, heroic. The problem with Sagittarius, obviously, they get into dogmas and blind faith and rules, and they lack compassion. A lot of terrorists get connected to Sagittarius because Sagittarius, when it's afflicted, when Jupiter's afflicted, they get so caught in religious dogma and fanaticism, and they can't see beyond that, and then religion becomes kind of a way to destroy others. So when we had 9/11, we had Mars conjunct K2 in Sagittarius, the sign of the United States, right near the ascendant, and it was that type of energy of, I actually had a friend who predicted a terrorist attack on the U.S. before it happened, because of that combination, and he was one of the few people that did it. But that's, you could logically see that because Sagittarius, with K2 is afflicting Sagittarius. K2 is debilitated there. Conjunct Mars, it brings out violence, terrorism. Whenever you see K2 and Mars together, you get terrorism. Sagittarius, that's terrorism. The key with Sagittarius, wherever you have planets in Sagittarius in the chart, it shows tendency towards dogma, rules, and dharma. But it also, the anecdote is that if you follow your dharma, then good luck comes to you, because this is Jupiter. Jupiter brings good luck if you're in dharma, the natural ninth house. But if you get caught up in rules and dogma and belief structures, and my religion says it has to be this way, then you're going to be in trouble. So Sagittarius has trouble with Mercury in the 7th house, and so it has trouble with communications. And if you know Sagittarius, they're just terrible with communications. And they have trouble listening, they have trouble speaking, they have trouble hearing, and so you really have to kind of coach them on, taking classes on, there are classes for people who have trouble with Mercury and communications. You can take classes like, the ideal one is, Nonviolent Communication by Martin Rosenberg, which teaches, how to listen and how to tell back to somebody what you've heard. And that's an important thing for Sagittarius, because they have trouble with relationship. Mercury owns the 7th house, and when they don't listen and when they can't hear the other person, their relationships are going to break up. And we talked about Rahu and Sagittarius before, which was new. Capricorn, Makara, which translates into the word crocodile in Sanskrit, is sometimes how people remember Capricorn. But Capricorn is the Vedic symbol is not really a crocodile. It's an amphibian creature with the face of a deer and the body of an amphibian. So there's a kind part to it. Again, it's one of these kind of dual. It's kind of like Sagittarius. It's the horseman. Capricorn is the the creature from the swamp, but it has a kind face. Capricorns, of course, are into work, hard labor, concentration, devotion. They make philosophers and mystics, which is something you don't think about. Capricorns are inventors and creators, which is something you often find. Capricorns are construction workers because they have to build, and they often become builders. And it's kind of an earthy sign. They're fabricators. It's really kind of a good thing. But they often become authors and inventors and producers also. Capricorns are very good business people. They often, the three most powerful business signs are, obviously, or there's 4 of them really. I think it's Taurus, Virgo, Libra, and Capricorn. They often, if their planets are well placed, they often have good business senses. Problem with Capricorns is they get confused, they have deep longing, they get anxious, they can be cruel, and they lack ideals and they have faith. Now, Capricorn is one of these kind of difficult signs to have in your chart, wherever it shows up. It tends to create a lack of hope, a sense of toil, a huge disappointment, and grief. And that's because it's connected to Saturn. And it sometimes planets placed in Capricorn, wherever it is in the chart, can feel like they're in a coma. There's no help for them. They have to work really hard. So whenever you see Capricorn in the chart, you have to support them in finding hope and in moving through hard work. Again, Saturn does really well working hard and being responsible. And Saturn teaches us, if we work and we are responsible, then we're going to reap the rewards over time. Saturn takes a long time to happen. And that's how you have to kind of counsel Capricorns, that it's going to take a long time, that you're going to have to work hard, you're going to have to be responsible. I mean, I have Venus in Capricorn, and you think that's a good placement, but it really is a terrible placement in many ways for me. And it's created a lot of hard work around women in relationships when I was young in my Venus period. And I actually, it created the sense of not working hard, actually. Venus wants to play, and you put it in Capricorn, Venus wants to play and not work hard, but Capricorn has to work hard. So you have to look for kind of relationships like that. You have to help people get out of their comas and realize that, hard work and responsibility are part of life. Capricorns have the most problem with Jupiter, because Jupiter is debilitated in Capricorn. It owns the houses, the 2nd and the 11th house. Those are the money houses. So what happens is that Capricorns are business people, and they get unethical in their business work practices, and they to make money. And this is true of corporate America. Obviously, there's all these scandals all the time about business, which is very Capricorn. And it's because everybody in business is unethical about, not everybody, but, it seems like most of the world in Kali Yuga is unethical about business, and that creates problems around money in business. So you have to, chances are, if Jupiter is afflicted in a Capricorn chart, they're probably not, they're a little, they're not earning money totally above board, and you have to kind of, if they come to you with business problems and when business is falling apart and having lawsuits, you have to just encourage them. This is part of the nature of this sign. You've got to learn ethics in business. Okay, now the Aquarius. Now, one of my teachers, Sanjay Rath, feels like this is the most difficult of the signs, and I think it gets bad press. Aquarius is one of these signs that also creates intense suffering. So whenever you have planets anywhere in Aquarius in any chart, it usually means you have a lot of bad past karma to work out, and the positive side of Aquarius obviously is it's connected to Rahu, to technology, to inventiveness. The United States is in a Rahu period now, and technology is king, and Silicon Valley is rolling in dough because of Aquarius and Uranus, and biotech is part of Aquarius, obviously. So those industries are very connected to that beautiful side of Uranus and inventiveness and Rahu creativeness and creating. But when you meet Aquarian people, they can get very depressed. You have to encourage them to keep busy. They can get very lazy. The Vedic texts say that Aquarius is the most hated by the devas, which means that it tends to create a lot of bitterness and sorrow and pain. It tends to create sadness and suffering. Aquarius, Saturn owns the 12th and the 1st house, and Aquarians are very kind of deep people. They're very mystical, philosophical, planet, they desire moksha. They often get caught in business and making money. It's the natural 11th house, right? So natural 11th house Aquarius is going to be connected to money and earning and income. And so they often are actually very good at it, but it doesn't bring happiness. And the key when you're advising Aquarians, depending on where that is in the chart, is that they need to find spirituality. They have to go for moksha, and that will take them out of their pain and their misery. And what happens to Aquarians is that even if something is given, it gets taken away from them, and it's one of these kind of difficult signs in that respect. But it's a very humanitarian sign. It's radical, rebellious. I think a lot of these, I talked about that at the beginning. I think a lot of movements, to create a better humanity come out of Rahu and Aquarius, trying to create a better world through social action, getting groups together and rebelling. So the positive side of Aquarius is that, they want to reinvent and create a new society, or create a new world. But this, if you know people that are, counter conservative, against the trend, super liberal, their lives are pretty miserable because they're taken out by the status quo. They're always angry. They're always sorrowful. So they have to find, you have to help them find a balance between positive social service, working for good causes, like working in a battered women's shelter is perfect for them, versus like being, rebel without a cause, because that, eventually just creates more pain. The problem with Aquarius, the moon is the problem with Aquarius. It owns the 6th house. Aquarians almost always have problems with their mother, especially if the moon is poorly placed or afflicted. That means they have trouble with anything connected to cancer, nurturing, food. All those things they don't eat properly. They don't know how to nurture themselves. So you have to do a lot of work with Aquarians around mother issues. I was doing an Aquarian chart a couple of weeks ago, and immediately, without even looking closely, I said, you probably have problems with your mother, and it's creating a lot of suffering for you. And they said, yes. It's one of those kind of hidden things that you might not think about, but it's one of these hidden things I'm trying to teach you in this course. Finally, we get to Pisces, the Pisces. Meena is the Sanskrit word. It's again another water sign. It's probably the second most Brahmin sign in the zodiac, creating teachers and priests and coaches and things like that. Spiritual teachers obviously come out of it. Pisces is the natural 12th house, so it desires moksha and liberation most. Pisces is connected to Neptune in Western astrology, and Neptune is connected to addiction and to spiritual addiction even. So one of the problems, with Pisces, if they haven't found spirituality yet, you need to help guide them to get to meditation and to spirituality, because if not, they get caught up in addiction. But sometimes they can, there's a thing called spiritual addiction. Sometimes, if you have a strong Pisces quality in your chart, you may, bypass the practicality of the real world in favor of doing your spiritual work, and then you end up with nothing in your bank account. Spiritual addiction can be a problem with Pisces. If Jupiter is really debilitated, then you can get despondency, despair, diffidence, restlessness. But those are qualities I usually don't see in Pisces. You usually get the more exhilarating, intoxicating, passionate energy of Pisces, joyful and blissful. And they're just wonderful people to be around because it's Jupiter. They become natural gurus and teachers, astrologers. Their Achilles heel is the Sun. The Sun owns the 6th house for Pisces, and most Pisces will have problems with their fathers, or they will have problems with bosses or government figures. They often need to work for themselves because they just won't get along with their boss. So that's something you can see. You see Pisces in their D10 chart being afflicted or something. Chances are they have a problem with their boss, especially like in the 9th house of bosses in the D10. The nice thing about Pisces, it brings the blessings of the goddess Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom who gives knowledge of moksha to free us off the plane of earthly existence. So wherever you see Pisces in a chart, it means the person has great talents and knowledge there. So it's one of those get out of jail free cards. Wherever you see Pisces in any part of any chart, if you have a planet there, you can probably tell the person you have a talent with these things. So for example, I have the sun in Pisces. It makes me a natural good leader, and it makes me a naturally good father. I've actually been very good at fathering people, and then I just have a natural talent for sun-related things because of sun in Pisces. Okay, so I'm going to take some quick questions. I don't know how much more I'm going to get to. Let me just go over this point. So I mentioned this earlier. So what you want to do with the signs then is you want to look for patterns. You know, if you see a lot of Pisces in repeating all over the chart, not just the Rashi chart, but in the Navamsha chart, in the other Varga charts, especially the rising sun of the Varga charts, see a lot of Pisces, then you want to talk about Pisces a lot in their readings because, you know, they have a lot of talent. You know, I have Pisces rising in my D10 chart, which actually gives me a lot of talent in business, which is something I wouldn't come out of my priestly nature. It wouldn't come out of my Jyotish background. It wouldn't come out of my mystical spiritual nature, but it's there in my D10 chart. So wherever you have Pisces rising in the Varga charts or Pisces in the charts, use the word talent, and that can guide your readings. I have a friend who has a lot of Aquarius in his chart, and we talk about Aquarius having chuckering. So he's got Jupiter. He's a Pisces rising, but he's got Jupiter in the 12th in Aquarius. He's like Aquarius rising in the Navamsha chart. He's got Jupiter in the 12th house in the D9 chart. You know, he's a person who's having trouble being in the world. He just wants moksha. He kind of ran after gurus when he was young, and he's been kind of struggling in the business world. It creates a lot of loss and frustration because he desires enlightenment, but he's not able to live in the practical world. So you want to look for those kind of patterns. What you know, the key in Jyotish is that if you see it just once in a chart, you almost don't want to mention it. But if you see the pattern repeating 3 or 4 or 5 times in different places in the chart, then it's a signature, and it means you need to talk to them about it. It's a major life issue. It's a major karma issue. It's a major school of karma issue. You know, does the chart have a lot of Aquarius? Does the chart have a lot of 8th house issues? Do you have a lot of planets in the 8th house in the Varga charts, or a lot of planets in the 8th house in Scorpio? I have a friend who is a very talented, amazing person, and he's got 6 planets in Pisces in the 8th house. And, you know, his life is a mess on many levels, and he's transformed it through spirituality, but he's always getting into legal problems and stuff like that. So kind of looking for these kind of repetitions as signatures that give you guidance on how to talk about the chart. Okay, I'm going to stop and take questions. I'm not even sure I'm going to get to part 1, which you can read about, and I can go over quickly next time. I always prepare too much material. So let me take some questions because I've been talking too much, and I didn't mean to talk so much today. I had a lot of material to get through, and I didn't even get through all of it, which is always the problem. Did you learn anything new about the science today? I was just my whole purpose in this course is to give you something new, something that you haven't learned before. and the trick is, you know, kind of learning a new vocabulary so that you go deeper with when you're talking about things. So memorize the keys to each of the signs. So whenever you see Pisces in any part of the chart, you think talents. This person has talents and luck there. Wherever you see Taurus, which is another planet of good luck and good fortune and brings material abundance to the person, you think, oh, they're going to be lucky and they have, you know, Lakshmi's grace, you know, in that part of the chart. When you see Scorpio, you've got to think, okay, this person is pretty deep. They're going through a lot of suffering. So you have to kind of memorize those new ways of looking at the signs. And they turn up in the Varga charts, they turn up in the moon chart, they turn up everywhere. Okay, I'm still talking. So your questions? Was it too much? Was it too much to take in? I talk so fast. The nice thing is that I put everything in writing and you can listen to the videotape again. So my big challenge is I give too much knowledge. I probably should have 16-week classes, but I don't know if anybody wants to sign up for a 16-week class. So doing an 8-week class, which means you have to listen to the videotapes twice, you have to go over the slides, you have to do the reading.
Barry, I just want to say thanks for putting it all together and getting us all here.
Okay, is that Kathy?
No, that's Darinka.
Oh, hi Darinka, good. Did you learn something?
Sorry?
Did you learn something new?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a friend of mine that I'm going to do her chart finally later today, and it's quite complicated. I think I asked in the Buddha group some advice, so it's really good to get into because I'm in that same place where you are using astrology as a psychological tool to get into those blocks and why is it we're doing the things we're doing. So I'm really enjoying, I mean, I love your posts, so I'm really enjoying your perspective on the psychological element, because I think that's really, we're all a bit mad. We've got to understand our madness.
Right, we have to understand our madness, and then we can change it. I mean, and you'll see as we get later in the course, sometimes there are things like when we do Boudica, they are like these hidden shadows. You can't see them. They run your life, and you do things, and you don't even know that you're doing it. I had this Boudica thing in my chart for about 7 years, and it was, you know, creating immense suffering. And I didn't, you know, when I was finally studying Boudica, I saw, oh my God, I've bought this hidden psychological influence. I couldn't see how it was running my life, you know. So that's what we want to do, because there are things that we're conscious of, but there are things that we're really unconscious of, you know. And the astrologer,
yeah, I think so.
You know, so one of the things that I'm going to do is look at the slides for part 2 as part of your homework, and read them carefully, because I put a lot of information in writing, and, you know, reading is almost enough to get it. So we can go over it quickly next week for maybe a half hour. One of the things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get you to understand, you know, astrologers sometimes say, you've got a debilitated Jupiter, you know, and you feel terrible, okay? Well, what does that really mean? It means, you know, Jupiter in Capricorn tends to get caught up in the material world, you know, and loses sight of, you know, spirituality and wisdom, you know. So you have to kind of learn how to translate all these things. You know, you can't just say this is good or bad, or this is debilitated, or this is exalted. You have to say, you know, you've got problems with Mars in Taurus because, you know, you get caught up in your passion and your sexuality and your male prowess, and you're not doing your duty, you know, to your family or something, you know, that kind of thing. So you have, what I'm trying to do is give you new building blocks to kind of come up with a new language for giving new insights. into explaining things more detailed and more carefully. So, and it's a skill. It's going to take time, but my goal is to give you like a new language. Okay, somebody needs. Okay, any other questions?
I thought it would have been fun. Just different people kept popping up as you're talking. If I had had their like charts, or I could almost guess on a few cases once I like learn more. Like I might even check just to sort of like confirm my intuition.
Right. What we will pull people's charts up for examples. I didn't get them all run for today. Some of you didn't send them to me. And in fact, if you want, I think it's kind of nice to see people's pictures because it kind of connects people. So if I didn't have a picture for Kathy, and I think I'm missing somebody else's picture. So if you want to send me a picture, if you don't want your pictures shown, that's okay. But I think the pictures are kind of fun. In fact, I'm going to close by showing you the pictures again. So, so here's Sonarel, who's been quiet, and she's all the way in Mumbai, staying up in the middle of the night to study Jyotish. Partho, my good friend in San Jose, and Christina, who didn't want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and Elizabeth also, who didn't want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Darinka, who got up at 6 o'clock in the morning in Australia to be with us, and that's so great, with her lovely cat. So you got 3 of them? And you got 4?
Yeah, that's an old picture. That was our kittens at my share house, like in 2015.
Okay.
And they were amazing. We had to pass them on, but yeah, four kittens.
Okay. That's great. I like that picture. I mean, that's the one I picked out of your photos. I hope you're okay. If you don't like my picture, send me a new one. And Carol, who I don't know is in the class, she signed up at 2 o'clock, but she's in Colorado. And welcome, Carol. And we're missing, and Varsha, who's in South Africa, who wanted to go to bed, and she'll be watching the tape too. So look for the tape. They'll come in Dropbox. If you didn't watch my tape on Dasha's, it's got a lot of good basic information on the good and bad qualities of the planets. Read the articles and read next week's slides, and we'll just keep working and do as much as we can. So I'm here for a few minutes if you want to do small talk. I'm going to turn off the recording.